I think that's sometimes the mistake people make is they jump too quick into why us, and really they should be jumping into why change, hopefully with a bias towards your unique capabilities. And once you've kind of lit a fire under their seat and they think, holy this is hot, the status quo isn't as great as I thought it was, my butt's burning, then they stand up, then they're ready to change and they're ready to move. And then once they're ready to move, you want them to move in your direction instead of someone else's direction.
From Toronto, Phanta Media presents the Not So Corporate Podcast. Hello. How you doing?
Hey.
This is Mark Drager, the host of the Not So Corporate Podcast. Over there, you heard Roland Echeverria.
This is me. That's right. That's me.
Roland Echeverria.
And over to my left, we have Louis Venecius.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Technically,
that was burning.
Leonidas.
That was so hot. Louis Vezenios. How did you say his last name, buddy?
Venecius, no?
No, Vezenios. Vezenios.
I like Leonidas. This is the best.
Yes. Anyway, guys.
Wicked name.
Guys, we have in store, I am so excited for all of the listeners because we have in store a very special guest.
I
a
got
very
myself
special
a
episode.
barbecue, by the way, just a few minutes ago.
First of all,
Wait.
guys, if I can get your attention, we have to have a moment of silence.
What happened?
Leah had her baby.
That's a great thing.
I know, but she's not here.
And
This
by
is
the way, it's all news.
Yes, I know.
That's
But
so
you know
like
what?
2 days ago.
You know what? I know, guys. This is episode number 44, June 9th. It's the beginning of June. It's the beginning of June.
The
It's a
worst
beautiful
part
day.
is like we weren't there to capture it because it was a Saturday.
I know.
Damn it.
But anyway, guys, we have a very special episode because despite the fact that Leah's not with us, we have a very special guest, Michael Harris. Michael is the writer of a great book called Insight Selling. He's the CEO of Insight Demand. And we got connected. I mentioned this a few, months ago now. I think it was back in like February or March. I was at an AMA Toronto event, and Michael was one of the speakers on Insight Selling. And at the event, I loved what he had to say. I spoke with him after the event, and I was thinking, I gotta get this guy's book. So I got the book, and I was like, I have to see. Michael's Torontonian like us. He's got to come up here to our offices and spend a bit of time with us. So we were lucky enough to have him on the podcast. We've already pre-recorded, a little secret. We had a great conversation with him, which is coming up. We spent, over an hour working through some things. But the reason why you have to take a listen to this is because for us, we spent so many years really focusing on sales, really saying you got to put customers first, you got to put clients first, you got to be consultative-based salesperson, you got to do all these things. And Michael reinforced and proved to me why I may have been missing the mark.
We were
for
wrong
a bunch
all
of
along.
years. Like for a bunch of years, I may have been missing
And Mark,
the mark.
I used to tell you, what are we doing? You say, why can't you just be happy? Why can't you just let it be, enjoy the moment?
What are you talking about?
What is going on?
I'm going on the tangent here.
Okay. But the reason why is because of insight selling is such a core thing.
That's right.
Providing insights. So it's not just about listening to what clients have to say and helping them get there, helping them figure out what they already know. It's about helping them figure out what they don't know.
Exactly. Well, the thing that people think they know what they know, but they don't know what they know until they know.
You know, like there's this great example in the book, and Michael's going to get into it a little bit more. Roland, you're 100% right. But here's the crux of it. This is right out of the book. This is out of page 12. In complex sales, which is what we all do here in marketing and video.
Very
complex sales, the new buying paradigm is often not successful for either the buyer or the seller. Buyers are not successful because they do not have the time or expertise to form an accurate buying vision on their own, and sellers are not successful because they don't know how to talk. They don't know how to talk to people.
Well, the thing with us, it's not a tangible thing. It's not a product. It's not something that you can touch.
Right.
And feel.
Right. So he equates it. Here's a great little example. You know, we're going to talk about storytelling a lot, but he basically tells you that doctors are tired of hearing the patient getting a mosquito bite, going to the doctor's office, and them saying, "What's wrong?" And the patient says, "I was bitten by a mosquito. I think it might have had West Nile virus because it's in the area. I'm really concerned. I looked on WebMD, and I believe that I have the identical symptoms, and the recommended treatment is penicillin." And then the doctor says, "I see. Let me write you a prescription for penicillin right away." Like that would never happen, right? It's the doctor's job to not provide the patients what they think they already know or what they think they need.
Right.
Doctors
Exactly.
have to provide an optimal solution.
That's right.
And that requires the doctor challenging the patient's self-diagnosis.
Right.
That's
Especially
what
in
we
this
all
day
have
and
to do.
age. Yeah.
Yeah, checking you out and touching
Right, we don't
places
just-
you
we
don't
don't
want to be touched.
Jesus, man.
What is up with you, man? You're in such a strange mood.
Love it.
Anyway, we are going to talk to Michael. We're going to have him in the studio. We're going to have a great
Yeah,
time.
fantastic.
Right now.
No.
So as I mentioned in the introduction, we have Michael Harris here. He's the CEO of Insight Demand and the writer of Insight Selling. Hey, Michael, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Listen, so I don't want to plagiarize too much. I think we can do this in the media. I want to just read just right out of the first page of the book because I
Okay.
felt like that did the best job of really setting up the conversation. So you wrote, these are your words. How do you like to hear your words back?
It's like hearing your own voice. It's a bit weird because it was you at a particular period of time, and it might not be me now.
Oh, well, there you go. So here we go. So complex selling has changed because buying has changed. In the past, buyers had to approach sellers early in the sales process because salespeople held the keys to the information kingdom. Today, however, the days of walking brochure salesmen are dead. With the proliferation of information and advice of the internet, buyers no longer need the information of salespeople. What they need now is insight. In typical voiceover style, I actually changed a few words there, but it's interesting to me that really you don't need salespeople today, right? Is that what you're saying there in that paragraph? Salespeople, it's a profession that's dead.
It's the gone with the dodo bird. We're all doomed. We might as well just stop the podcast right here and slit our wrists and
Yeah,
slowly slip into the bathtub.
it's the end of the world as we know it, right?
Yeah.
So what I loved about the book is you very clearly set up right away the idea between the simple sale and the complex sale. Can you walk us all through that a bit? Because I never really spent any time thinking about the fact that there was a difference.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to differentiate between the simple sale, which I think could die a quick and painful death, because there is so much information out there that you don't need a salesperson for information anymore. So a salesperson has to take on a bigger and they have to take on a better role. What do I mean by that? Well, when I get sick, the night before I go and visit the doctor, I go onto WebMD because it's there, or any other service where I can start researching the conditions that I have. And I'm pretty convinced that I can become a doctor online overnight before I go and visit the doctor. And suddenly I know what my predicament is. I have an idea for what solution that I need. And so when I go to visit the doctor the next morning, I'm really just looking for him to pull out his prescription pad and write me a prescription. And if medicine was competitively priced here in Canada, I'd be looking for a discount as well.
Well, because we did all the work for them.
Exactly.
I mean, essentially, we know exactly what's wrong with me. I have tonsillitis. Pull out my tonsils now.
Or write me a prescription for penicillin.
Yeah.
Or the best ones when you go to a doctor and said that it could be this two things. There's no other option. So which one is it, doc? And they look at you like, Mom, we're gonna check it out. There's a lot of stuff in the internet these days.
So I think if it was a simple sale and it was a simple diagnosis, I would think that you could pretty much do that. In fact, you wouldn't even need a doctor. You just go onto Amazon and you'd buy the medication that you need. And so I think that's where a lot of sales is going. Mm-hmm. However, as a doctor will tell you, patients don't always come in with the right buying vision for what's wrong with them and what they need. And it's the doctor's job to push back and say, hey, wait a second, I know you've learned this online, but let me just ask a couple of more questions. Let me share a couple of stories with you so that I can shine the light of insight on unrecognized value that you're not seeing, and so that you make bigger and better decisions. And so I think that's really the role of a salesperson, is to help that buyer on their buyer's journey and to be that guide that guides them to the right place, that gets them closer and closer to the truth.
This is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because I think so much of what we do, so much of what all of our listeners do, whether you're in a creative field or marketing or video or what have you, any kind of agency type thing, it's not a simple sale, right? Like it can't be boiled down to a package and be anything other than competitive on price, right? Like we're dealing with people who kind of know what they think they want, or they think they know what they want, or they'll come to us with that WebMD thing, and then we have to be the doctors to tell them, no, like you don't know what you want. And so I just wanted to have this conversation because insight selling and the way that you speak about it, I think is key. I think it's a cornerstone. I don't see how you can grow or build a business today without approaching sales this way.
If you have a deep sense of integrity, if you deeply believe in what you're doing, you would do nothing else but that. Because anything other than that is dishonest. And allowing a client to pursue their buying vision, if it doesn't represent the truth, is a highly dishonorable thing to do.
I agree. I couldn't, it leaves me speechless, or not speechless. I guess I'm flabbergasted sometimes when people untrustingly withhold information from us. And I can understand why. They may have been burned in the past. They may be used to dealing with people who just want to take the money. But we spend so much time trying to explain to people and prove to people through transparency, through the way our pricing works, why we're not trying to take them for a ride. Like, we just want to help them out, and they need to be able to open up and share information to do so. But again, I just don't see how you could sell any way other than without full integrity. Like, how short-sighted is it to try and take the money and run? How can you build a business these days this way?
Yeah, I think also customers are so hard to get today that, you're really looking for that repeat business. And if you don't sell it in properly, then the customer is not going to be happy. There's going to be implementation issues. They're not going to end up with the right solution to their problem. And who are they going to blame? They're not going to blame themselves. It's your fault. You should have told me.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, hey, whoa, wait a second. You weren't even telling me, disclosing to me beforehand. And it's my fault, but it is your fault.
It's funny though. Speaking to your point, we had a conversation last week. You came into the office and you were talking about like forms, right? Like online forms, right?
The great debate here at the company.
Yeah, and I think in a kind of way, your model really expresses that the questions are not meant to garner information or incite a answer from the client. They're actually really meant to clarify. And what you should be doing is using these scenarios to create that contrast rather than building questions around that, right?
So let's touch on that real quick, because we mentioned it in the opening, but we didn't dig too deep into it. We haven't given you a chance to explain it. In your book, Insight Selling, you mentioned these insight scenarios. What are they? Louis was referencing it just now. Walk me through a bit of that if you can.
Okay. My background was solution selling. Well, I used to run a finance company, but my background is solution selling. I was a partner at solution selling. At solution selling, it was the first methodology that came out, or maybe the second after spin, but it was spin with the sales process that was all questions based. I think that can work. I think that can work when you're taking a customer that's most of the way there and the questions just get them over the finish line.
Right.
But if you have a customer that's gone online, if you're not getting them as a blank slate, but they've gone online, that can be a little bit dangerous, because it's just like when we go online for our health condition and then suddenly we think we have stomach cancer. And then once we've convinced ourselves of that, it's pretty hard for the doctor to convince us otherwise. And so questions don't necessarily work as well as they could in that particular scenario. So what you need to do is you need to turn the lights on in their mind. You need to open their mind in a non-confrontational way, not to point the finger at you where you suddenly feel threatened and your immediate defense is to throw up the blockers, the filter, and none of your information is going to get it through. Instead, what you do is you take that information and you put it inside a story, just like putting people inside a Trojan horse to get it beyond the wall. And then, because the story isn't about them, they don't feel threatened, and because you're not jamming your conclusion down the customer's throat, they don't feel like they have to push back, because the salesperson isn't doing what customers hate, and that's being pushy. So then the customer can actually sit back and relax and listen to your story. And if it's insightful enough, they just may start to tell themselves a new story where new choices make more sense. So that's why I went from questions to insight scenarios or these kind of insightful based stories. And then you follow up with questions after that, but after the lights have gone on, and then they have a point of reference to answer your questions.
Right.
So let's take one step even further back. What's insight? We read the opening. We talked about how providing insight is so key. You really cover this great in the book, but what's insight? What's the power of it?
Well, we all know, but we don't really know.
Yeah,
That's kind of the big joke.
So the thing is, like,
that's the dirty secret.
I mentioned this on the podcast a bunch of weeks ago that I was at this event and I loved your presentation. There were the other two. One was great. The other one I was a bit like, this is interesting. The older gentleman, but I loved your presentation. But I challenged you there, and I said, like, you were saying insight, but what's the difference between insight selling and consultative selling and spin and all these other things? Like, isn't it at the end of the day that our intentions are to help people? It's to lead them through the journey and help them arrive at a solution. And you challenged back, to your credit.
I did and I didn't. Because what I didn't come back immediately, and I didn't come back selling my point. I didn't come back pushing to my agenda. I approached you and respected you, and I thought there was a lot of truth to what you said, and I said, well, you're partially right. And I recognized that because my objective was to get to the truth, not to win the argument. And I think...
Oh, that's hard for me.
I think your intention is so important when you do this, because then someone's willing to listen, because you're not jamming your agenda on them. But anyway, I'm sorry, I digress.
Back to insight. What is insight and the power of it today? Is it a buzzword?
It's a buzzword.
It is? I did not expect you to say that.
And a lot of people don't know what it is. And I know a lot of people that have been through insight selling training, and you ask them what an insight is, and they kind of give you an abstract definition. And then you say, can you give me an example? And it's like, no. And then you think, well, what was the point?
Yeah.
So I think that's a word out there that almost does more harm than good. So why don't I answer what I think insight is? I think insight is the ability to look inward and see the world differently. And I think you're only going to see the world differently when your beliefs change. We see a pattern. If the pattern is common, we discount it. If the pattern is new, we suddenly tell ourselves a story about it. Why? Because we're scared of chaos, because something might come along and whack us, and we're dead. So we tell ourselves a story, a cause and effect story, to try and make sense out of the pattern. And then that story creates an emotion, and then that creates action. So I think what an insight is it takes someone back to the data so that they can tell themselves a new story that makes more sense. So someone might say, well, then an insight, that's just a customer objection, isn't it? And it is. But on the other side of the same coin of an objection is, what does a customer have to believe to make that objection true? And then what would they need to believe to buy your product? And an insight is how you bridge the gap between one to the other. So whenever I work on these insight-based stories, and incidentally, I call them insight scenarios, because when I wrote this book, a lot of people are talking storytelling and marketing, but in sales, that's too flaky. I couldn't tell a CFO or a CEO a story. No, I got to stick just to the facts. And you put them to sleep with facts, and facts don't stink. Don't stick when they stink.
No, they stink. They stink.
But
right
that's
there.
why I called it a insight scenario, because we weren't storytelling. We weren't fibbing. We were telling a story that's purposeful and that helps a customer see the world in a different way. So whenever anyone starts a story, the first thing I say is, who are you telling the story to? And what do they believe today? And what do you want them to believe after hearing the story?
That's so interesting, because when I think back to the way that we used to sell, and we've been shifting through this process over the last month and a half, I'd say 2 months, we've been really shifting our approach to sales. I used to say to my team, we need to be great consultative sales type people. We need to help take people on the journey. And what I found out was happening was the team would spend a lot of time asking people what they wanted. And then I would turn to them and I'd say, they're not in a position, what does it matter what they want? They're not in a position to it. You need to take all of this data and you need to consider it and then go back to them with what they need. It's not about what they want, it's about what they need. And what I didn't realize is I think I was approaching this more on the insight side, because I would connect all these dots. Roland would connect all these dots. The team, we would sit down, we'd work together, and we'd go, this is what we know. Here's what's happening in the marketplace. Here are all the dots. And we need to go back to the client and tell them what they need, because we're providing, in my mind, insight then into what they need, versus us going, well, do you like left or right?
Yeah.
Do you like white or black? Do you like up or down? Like, let me just keep asking you questions. And it's like, what does that matter? right? Like what does it matter if they like up or down or left or right or
what
black or white?
you're doing is you're doing a pretty simple sale, and you're assuming that the customer has the answers, and all you have to do is ask for those answers. Well, they've already had the opportunity to do that online, so that sale is dead. So that's why I think just questions on their own don't get you there. So what you're really looking to do is help them see a bigger and better picture.
But so
Sure.
you know, we've talked offline. I think that I kind of innately somehow jump to these things. Like they strike me as right and wrong. And someone will say something and I'll go like inherently it'll feel wrong to me because of whatever reason, and I've been able to trust my gut. It's gotten us pretty far so far. But when I try to train this to people, if people are listening and they say, first of all, I can follow what's going on now, and I totally want to get into that, and I can read this book. How do you learn to connect the dots for people?
This was the number one reason I wrote the book, or one of the number one reasons I've written the book, and it's the number one thing that people get from doing the program, because it's the number one weakness in sales. Great salespeople are curious. They have an itch. They're desperately trying to get to the truth, and it drives them nuts. Almost insane. You listen to Bill Mcdermott, the CEO of SAP, well over a $20 billion company. He's a sales guy, and he's CEO of one of the biggest software companies in the world. How great and how inspirational is that for all of us? But what does he say the key characteristic trait of a salesperson is? It's that curiosity. And certain people have that, and you have that, and you've had the experience to have gained that thing that I call sales wisdom. That's where you not only have product knowledge, but you have customer knowledge, and you're able to put the two together. So suddenly you have a helicopter view of the customer's world, so you're not selling point to point. You ask a couple of questions, the customers never go like they do in the sales training class from question 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 sequentially, like we used to teach it in solution selling. They'll go from question 1 to 37 to 18. It's like, whoa, you just went off the page. You're on page number 4 now. You're doing my head in. I've been lost in a sea of questions. And yet, the people who are curious know the answers behind the questions. They know the customer's world behind the questions. They take the questions and they push them aside, and they move with the customer, and they see patterns. So they're not following the customer. Sometimes they're leading the customer, because suddenly you see a new pattern. And once you give that to the customer, that's gold, that's insight. And then they look at you and they think, you're the one I need. You're the guide that knows the pathway up the mountain. Together, we're going to get there. And I think that's critically important.
And that's learnable. That's trainable. That's repeatable.
That's hard.
I think it boils down to that curiosity. If you don't have that, no matter how many courses you do, it's hard to. You have to genuinely find that.
Here's what I'm trying to do with the stories. Is the stories, think of insight almost as wisdom, and there's wisdom in these stories. So the number one issue I have when I try and create these with salespeople, and I'll be interested to hear your view in terms of whether or not you've experienced this. Everyone's pretty good. Think of a story. What's a story? It's simple. It's a goal, problem, and solution. Easy. Yeah. That's a bit boring. Because how do you know you're not telling boring stories? Well, you want to tell something insightful. What do you mean something insightful? Well, you want to tell a story to someone who's not already there, but someone who isn't quite there, and you want to try and get them there. Someone who believes something that's going to result in them not buying your product, and then knowing what they need to believe to buy your product, and then seeing if you can help get them there.
Can I ask you a question? Because we were talking about how much storytelling I do. Have you ever been in a sales meeting where you start into a story and then halfway through you go, oh shit, like this is going to prove the exact opposite. And I didn't, because I'm just pulling these stories out. I'm like, oh, this is a great story. And I get into it and then I realize, and I'm like, and that's why you don't do that. Like, has that ever happened to you? Or are you a little bit more professional than I am, just pulling stuff out of the air?
No, someone else asked me, who did I write this book for? I wrote it for myself. So every mistake everyone else has made, I make all the time. And I still make those mistakes. So I'm just trying to mitigate all my bad habits.
It's happened to me on a few occasions where I go, I got to start paying attention to because I'll get halfway through and go, why did I start telling this story again? Yeah. Because I realize I'm about to prove the exact opposite of my point.
No, not so much. No. Sorry.
Okay, Roland, I'd be interested in your point of view, because you've been you've been with us for 6 years. You've watched our firm change. You've been on this podcast a lot, and we talk to our listeners all the time about where they're at in their business. You've been very vocal to what's important in sales and not important in sales as someone who's not a salesperson. So what are your thoughts on this conversation?
It's hard for me to say because I'm not a salesperson and I don't know anything terminology when it comes to sales. All I see is I see that we create a product and I'm always genuinely trying to find a solution for a problem. And I guess somehow somewhere in there it helps with sales or kind of helps us go somewhere. But I think from my perspective, it feels like, it's not a order desk. It's about understanding or trying to really be open, have communications, and with the person build something that's going to actually help them. And it's just, here's a product, it's done, I want to get it done quickly kind of thing. That's kind of how I see things.
You guys are selling great work. You're not selling videos. You're selling really, really great work. And so how do you sell that to someone who doesn't have the capacity to appreciate great work?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting question,
That's a
because we
great
spent
question.
many years trying to build a company that sold great work, and I realized probably last summer that people do not want to pay for great work. That's not even enough, and it's not even competence, and it's not even experience they're paying for. They don't value as much as we value,
Because they don't know the cost of not doing great work. So it's almost like you need to go out and sell the cost of not doing great work
Well-
so that they can see the contrast between great
Here's-
work and not great work.
Here's what I've been able to establish. People pay for positive outcome. Most of the people we work with, at least, that we attract, because maybe it's our attitude, is they do not care what it takes to get from A to Z. All they care about is positive outcome. We have certain objectives. Do we hit them or not? Do we exceed them or not? Yeah, we want it to look good. We want it to be creative. We want it to be professional. We want to have fun working with you. We want it to be on time. We want it to be on budget. All those things are like a bare minimum in my mind. What people come to us for is positive outcome. And the other thing with this thinking about positive outcome is it elevates us above the minutia of details. Because as long as you're concentrating on that helicopter view you were talking about, what will we succeed or will we not succeed? I'm even willing to be extremely blunt with you because you're paying me for positive outcome, not to be your friend. You've kind of pushed me on. Maybe I'm a bit blunt sometimes or a bit
No, I'm
direct
just
with
saying
people,
you don't
but-
always need the right hook.
Right, you don't
could
always need
have
to poke
a velvet
people.
glove.
Yeah. So there's a carrot and a stick, right? I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of the stick, apparently. That's what I'm hearing. But
And I think they both can work, but it might just be interesting if you have something else in your repertoire that
well,
you
and
can
I've
use.
I've read the book, and now I had a meeting this morning. Where I was trying to figure out how to implement this in a more conscious manner. But
and then if that doesn't work, then you bring out the right hook.
But for us, it's all about, people don't, and that's the thing. It's like we want to do the very best work we can, but sometimes people don't value what it will cost to do. Like they like our minimum expectations already exceed their expectations.
And then you're a nice to have, but not a must have.
Exactly. And we spent so many years as a nice to have. I went, guys, let's focus on positive outcome, because when we focus on that, we can actually shift the
Can I
conversation.
jump in there, though?
Yeah.
Can they always absolutely put their hand on their heart and the CFO can see the positive outcome?
We sell to marketers.
Okay. So they can't necessarily prove it. They feel that there's a positive outcome, but they can't prove it. Because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine recently, and he said, well, can't you prove absolutely what you do is from this to this, and you invest $100,000 and you get a $500,000 return? And I said, if it was that easy, they would have done it.
Yeah.
They've grabbed all the low-hanging fruit, and so now you're selling kind of the soft things. Does it work? Doesn't it work? It's more difficult to prove, and therefore it's more difficult to sell.
So
I think that's when you really need this.
You potentially could, though, right? So if you, through like just some really simple analytics, if you were to set a 6-month benchmark or a year-over-year benchmark for sales, and then you were to track for 3 or 6 months every change in the business, whether that's competitive change, market change, staffing change, and then you were to assess, I know it's not mathematical because there's a little bit of guesswork in there,
well,
but you
not
were to
only
assess,
that, but there's the economy changed.
No, I know. But if you
their
were to
products
assess
might be
an
better.
algorithm or a weighted value to any of these changes, and you could potentially at the 6-month mark say, this is what we were doing before, this is what we're doing now, this is how we weighted our value base for what's been happening in the marketplace, and you could arrive at a net positive gain, not 3.2% blah 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 blah, but
it
just
wouldn't be 100% accurate. It would be just a certain level.
So here's
of
the thing with
accuracy.
analytics, and this is now I'm going way off a tangent about marketing. Is better or not? right? You have better, you have no change, and you have worse. If you can prove positive change, why not at least prove positive change, and then let's work on exact ROI. But so much of what analytics happens and what Google does and everything, everyone in the world lives in this idea of we can have extremely detailed analytics, but at the end of the day, all you're trying to prove is positive change or not. All right, let's just like set the benchmark a little bit lower, and then you could do this. You could work it in.
Sure, but clients don't
And
always.
it would only cost $15,000 to run all the analytics.
And clients don't always believe it because they think you're just that lucky case study. And out of 15 clients, that's the one where it really worked because it implemented properly, and maybe my people wouldn't implement it the same way that you did. Anyway, the point that I'm getting at is back to some of these insight scenarios, because I think it's an important point, and I was getting on that. When I work on these things, what do the really great salespeople, what are they able to do, and what are the ones that are less great, not able to do? The great salespeople are able to know what hell looks like in the absence of having your capability. They have the customer knowledge to know what a real customer looks like who's dealing with their current platform, and they can give a real example of how it's not working with the status quo today. Mm-hmm. And that is critically important, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to reduce the customer's baseline because they're in denial.
Right.
Because customers suffer from the overconfidence bias.
Right.
And so what you're trying to do is reduce their baseline so that they see the delta of your offering. Because if a customer only thinks they're 3 feet in water, then they're not going to buy your solution. But if you can help them recognize that they're not ankle deep in water or knee deep in water, but they're drowning out in the middle of the lake, then suddenly they're in a position to see the value of your offering. And that's what great salespeople are able to do. The ones that aren't so great skip over the problem by saying something nebulous like, oh, well, it lacked accuracy or it was prone to error. And someone's thinking, what does that mean? Like, intellectually, I know what it means, but I don't feel it in my gut. Yeah. But the great salespeople are able to give that real example, because no one is going to move from their current platform unless they think it's broken to a new platform. They'll bring out the duct tape, they'll duct tape it together, fix it internally, and they'll say things are great just of the way that they are. And so you need to show that their current platform is broken before they're willing to step on a bigger and better one. That's my view, at least. And that's kind of the heart of what these insight scenarios are key in dealing.
So how do you redefine that value, and how do you break them out of the status quo bias that they may be living in?
Well, you need to meet them where they are, and then you need to help them see that the problem is bigger, badder, and worse than what they're experiencing. And you do that by sharing an example about someone else who's similar to them, and they suddenly think, just like that other person, wow, I didn't know my problem was this big. I didn't know it was costing me this much. I better do something about it. You got to sell why change before you sell why us.
So there's an empathy factor there.
I think that's really important. I think the empathy is really quite important, because I've heard some VPs of sales that when their salespeople are out selling and the customer says, yeah, this is going really bad, and they say, oh, good. And then they say, let me tell you about my solution. Oh, you have to laugh, don't you, sometimes?
Well, if you don't laugh, you cry, right? It's just, So 2 things that jumped out at me in the book. No, good things. No typos or anything, although I wouldn't catch them because I suck at grammar and spelling. But this is interesting to me. So speaking specifically to B2B type sales, which is what we do, in our community, the people who are listening, B2B creative type sales. This was interesting. Over 60% of sales opportunities end with the buyer deciding to stick with the status quo and not buy. That is interesting to me, that people go through the motions, they go through the exploration, they think that they're going to make a decision. 60% of sales opportunities end with the buyer deciding to stick with the status quo. So that could be a preceding firm, that could be a different agency who's not doing as well, it could be people who's ripping them off, but rather than risk change. That's huge to me. That's crazy. And at the same time,
but isn't that human nature, just to try to stay
in your safe
environment, even if because you can recognize that something's bad, but then you start making excuses as to, well, it's not as bad. We do this, it could be better. Put in the duct tape, like you mentioned. That should be enough.
But this further proves that you don't need to only we've talked about this a lot, because this is going to get to the next point real quick, which is you had this great quote.
But
Why?
before we get to the next
Okay.
point, let's touch on that one.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a classic. Think of every RFP, request for purchase or request for information. Everyone goes in and they're pitching their unique capabilities. The customer might not even be convinced that they have a problem that's big enough to solve. Clearly, that statistic indicates that they don't. So I think part of what you need to be doing is selling why change, and then getting into why change through us. And hopefully you're selling why change with a bias towards your capabilities when and if you can,
Right.
but you can't always. I think that's a critical point there. And one of the reasons behind that, because I've done a lot of research on this, because it's back to that thing that we do in sales where you have this itch and it bugs you. And so that's been an itch of mine. It's been driving me nuts because it is the biggest problem in B2B sales. And so why do customers do that? And I think the reason they do that is because they have a status quo bias. And what I mean by that, it's not like they put the status quo bias up on an evaluation shelf and they put your offering up on the evaluation shelf and they weigh the pros and cons of each. No, they take the status quo, take it off the shelf, put it under their arm, lovingly stroke it and kiss it, and then they evaluate your offering and they evaluate the risks of change and the benefits of change. And the problem with that is that, according to Dan Kahneman in 2002, he won the Nobel Prize in economics, and he wasn't even an economist, he's a psychologist, but that we are 2 times more motivated to avoid losses than we are to achieve gains. So if they're looking at your offering and they're looking at the cost of change and the benefits of change, then the benefits of your offering are being overshadowed by the costs of change. And so we've all been in those situations where the clients just think, yeah, you're a nice to have, but the risk of changing and how do I know you do what you do? What you need to do is bring them back and help them do a risk analysis on the status quo.
Lack of change. We talked about this with Evan a few weeks ago. And we talked about the fact that back in March, I was making some changes to the business, and I had to look at and associate a risk profile with the risk of not changing. And it was exactly that. We all think about change as this big, scary thing. We think of not changing as safe. There's a risk to standing still.
Look at Kodak.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, look at Blockbuster. Look at AOL. Look at lots of companies. Look at Yahoo, who tried to do a lot of change but still couldn't. So the second thing in this, though, that right on the very next page, why would a customer buy from you rather than go with someone else? Why us? We have been hitting this home so much because I'm so tired of, as a firm, we had a belief that we're really smart. There's lots of smart people. We're really good. There's lots of good people. We're creative. There's lots of creative people. When you start to really, over the last year, we've really looked at our firm. We've really challenged the people we work with to look at themselves even. But it's not enough to be creative and smart and good and nice and professional and all of those things. It's weird. 5 years ago was enough for us to be those things. The people we were working with, the size of company, the size of client, it was enough. As we moved up market and as we worked with bigger and bigger people who were just like what we found used to be our differentiator was just like minimum expectations from them, from the people we were moving up market to. It wasn't enough to be good, smart, creative, great people, nice people, professional, on budget, any of those things. So then we start to say, well, then why us? Right? Like we can't pitch to you, hey, work with us because we're smart. Everyone is smart. There's tons of smart people out there. We're good with camera work. Everybody has good camera work. So now we're starting to say, why us? In this environment where we're just as good as everyone else. And if I was starting a firm today, I would say, why me? Right? There's lots of existing people out there, but you can nip at their heels if there's some reason why you. How do you arrive at that why you?
Yeah, I think if you could show them your video and then show someone else's, and if they were able to appreciate the difference, then that would be an easy sale. And maybe you wouldn't need salespeople. You could just sell your stuff online. The customers would come in and click to do a certain video and fill out a form, and you're done. But what if the customer doesn't quite yet have the appreciation to appreciate the difference between your video and someone else's? So maybe one of the reasons why you is because you're able to help educate the customer and bring them up to a level where they're able to see the differences. But I think what you need to do before you say why us is why change. and get them to the point where they're ready to change. Because you're almost assuming that they're ready to change, and yet 60% of the deals end with them doing nothing. So I think that's sometimes the mistake people make, is they jump too quick into why us, and really they should be jumping into why change, hopefully with a bias towards your unique capabilities. And once you've kind of lit a fire under their seat and they think, holy Christ, this is hot, the status quo isn't as great as I thought it was, my butt's burning, then they stand up, then they're ready to change and they're ready to move. And then once they're ready to move, you want them to move in your direction instead of someone else's direction.
How do you do that in a I've never been comfortable saying, oh, you really should be looking at your competitors. They have video. You guys need video. Like, that feels slimy to me. And how do you light that fire in a creative industry or in an industry? How do you light that fire without saying, hey, you better keep up or you're about to fall behind?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. It feels a bit oily.
Yeah.
But if you do it from the right place, you might tell a story about another customer who wasn't quite jazzed about doing video and what that was costing them and what had happened to the marketplace and what people were looking for in terms of information and the number of people that they were missing. And then once they made that change, the benefits that ensued from that. I mean, I'm not in your marketplace, but I think something like that could be
I don't
quite
think
helpful.
it's any different from any kind of consultative based, like some kind of consulting, some kind of training.
But what I don't have is I don't have the real example of a real customer being in a real situation and suffering from their platform not performing. And you would have that experience. And so you'd be able, and that would make the difference between a story that pops and one that flops. Because you want the customer not just to nod their head and say, yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense. You want someone to think, oh my God, and feel it in their stomach and think, yeah, that's happening to us. That's exactly our scenario. I kind of knew it. It was a shadow in the background, but you've just taken the light and you've turned it on that, and I see that now. And I think that's the huge differentiator, and that's where experience really helps. So
how do you position that to somebody who thinks they know everything? Say you're with somebody who is a CEO. He's 30 years deep into this company. The company is successful. What's the right story for him?
You're not really making it easy for me, are you?
and to follow follow that question.
To be fair, the easy stuff's easy to figure out.
You don't do that on the podcast.
and to follow that question.
Oh, you're gonna make it worse.
Is how do you?
Your mother's been kidnapped.
Yeah,
and you have
exactly.
10 minutes.
And you have laryngitis and you can't talk.
Yes, you have to do it completely through American Sign Language.
No, but how do you come up with them? Like, how do you come up with those stories?
That is a great question, and I don't mean that in not a genuine way, but it's one of the common things that salespeople say when they go through kind of these insight selling programs is they say, I've never been a CEO before.
Right.
How the hell am I going to provide insight to a C-level executive who's got 30 years of experience? Am I going to outthink him on his business? Come on, give me a break. Am I really going to teach him about the new way to deal in his business? And I think the short answer to that is
yes.
No. Yes and no.
Yes.
But
short answer is yes. Go in, guns popping, or whatever it is people say nowadays.
But I think...
But what if you just share your thoughts? You don't tell him, this is how you need to do it. This is what you're doing wrong.
Is that like the idea of like my truth? This is my truth. No one can
this
argue
is my
with
humble
truth.
opinion. This is what I base my experience is. This is what I think. And maybe somewhere along the way you strike a couple of chords and he jumps on your
I guess the point I was making in that is you don't necessarily have to outthink the CEO, but what you can do is you can rely on a couple of biases that they have. And I already told you about the optimism bias, where they overestimate what their baseline is. Mm-hmm. They think their baseline is here. And so when you tell them that you can improve the results by 30%, they discount 90% of that. So you've only got 3%. Mm-hmm. What you need to do is reduce their baseline, not by showing them how they're doing it badly today, because that's going to piss them off and they're going to push you back, but by sharing a story about someone else and how they weren't doing something perfectly. Okay. And then he starts to look at it and think, wow, just like him, I'm not doing it perfectly. Right. Now, the big mistake people make when they do this is it goes something like this. Oh, You should have seen John. Same position as you, but the guy was such a loser. You wouldn't believe what he was doing wrong. But then we came along on our shiny horse and we rescued him. You don't want to do that. So you don't want to make the customer that you're telling the story about the loser of the story. You want to make them the hero of the story. So you need an external villain. And often that's changing the status quo, changing technology, changing government regulation, but it can't be the customer or their employees.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the ways to do it. And the other thing to do is the customer status quo bias. And you need to tell them a story that helps them, for the first time, start doing a proper risk analysis on the cost of the status quo. Because they've already done a cost of the benefits of change.
Right.
And the risk of change. And so I think those are two really fertile areas to look for insights to a C-level executive.
This is your life, eh? Like this you're so into this conversation, and I love it. This is what you do all day, every day. Think
it's
about
the
this.
itch.
Yeah.
You know what I said about salespeople? When you're in something where you get that itch, it's everything.
So how maddening, how frustrating is it for you to deal with people who just are like so unprofessional in sales? Like you're watching them, you're like, oh, please just stop. Won't you please stop?
I like salespeople.
Really?
I really like salespeople, and I think most of them are pretty genuine. Some might get a bit lost, and they developed, as Martin Seligman would classify, learned helplessness, where things don't work and then they get discouraged. But I don't think that's really who they want to be. I think salespeople are normally pretty positive, and I think they normally want to help their customers, and they just get in a situation where they can't and they get lost. So one of the things I do in those scenarios is I put them together in small groups when I do my workshops with a seasoned salesperson and maybe with a sales engineer or someone that lives with the customer actually after they buy your offering, and so that they can bring that knowledge, because I think more knowledge you have on the back end of the business, the more you can bring to the front end of the business. And then I think they start having these discussions and start trying to put together these stories. And they're in a group where they get re-energized. And then they start to believe in the business more because they gain more confidence that they have more depth. Because they know when they walk into the customer's office, the customer is poking them. Why? Right. Because they want to see how deep their knowledge is. And if the customer can poke their finger through their knowledge and they see tumbleweed rolling in the background, you're not going to deal. But if they can poke them and they're like steel, then they think, that's my guide.
Yeah.
Is that Larry? You need your Larry? Was that your guy who you took to England?
My guy was Lee, and we're still great friends today. And he's a guy where I joined a company and I joined as sales, and I wasn't doing as well as I would have liked to have in the beginning. I came from kind of investment banking, and we were selling structured products to CFOs, and I was going with my PowerPoint presentation. And I was trying to lead people with our technology, to the solution, and that wasn't working. And so Lee was on the kind of client service side, the delivery side. And so we became best friends. And I went to his meetings and he went to mine. And the more I learned on the back end of the business, the better I was on the front. And the more he learned on the front, the better he was on the back end business. And together, we just became kind of invincible and became a complete person. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with these stories, is make someone more of a complete person.
I'm a bit fortunate. I went to film school. Right, I don't have an undergrad. I didn't go to business school. I've learned 100% by mostly just reading and talking to people. If you ask someone a question, they usually give you an honest answer. I never considered myself a salesperson for the longest time, and now it's one of my favorite things because it's actually the front end opportunity to help people the most. Like I find myself loving meeting with people simply because I can help them. What do you say to someone who's maybe early in their career or doesn't come from a business background, doesn't come from a sales background? They don't even consider themselves a salesperson, but they're an entrepreneur and they have to run their business and they have to sell. What do they do? I think that's
great. I wish we could take the word sale in terms of the connotation that we have and blow it up and develop a new term, because it comes with so much baggage. There's nothing wrong with being a salesperson. And I think in your heart of heart, if you come from a good place, and that good place is really to serve the customer, and if you can attach what you're selling to something bigger and better and bolder than yourself, then I think there's a spark there. I'm here today because I met you at the AMA conference, and I felt like we were kindred souls. I felt like we were both trying to do the same thing. You weren't interested in bringing me in here to help your salespeople sell more. You had a mission for where you wanted to see this company go, and you wanted to do great things, and you saw that maybe I could help you do that. And I felt the same spark in you. And I think customers see that spark. So I think if you're developing a sales program to try and help you make more sales, I think you need to take it up to the level and to help you do something.
What if you're the person who goes, I'm not a salesperson?
Then I think that's great. Because they don't want to be a salesperson, but do they want to be someone that truly helps someone, that helps someone see the bigger and better vision, that helps someone get out of hell and get into a better place? Then I would say that there's a place for them. And who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to connect with another person? Who doesn't want to matter? Who doesn't want to make someone feel felt? Who doesn't want to do something meaningful? I mean, what we really all want is meaning. Sure, we want money, but that wears out after a while. Yeah. And what you want is meaning. And I think there's a huge opportunity in sales to bring meaning.
Love it.
I feel like philosophically, that's stuff that Roland talks about a lot, and that you also talk about a lot, at least as of late.
So what about those salespersons who always follow a script? I find, in my experience, some of the salespeople that when I see a salesperson, is the guy that follows that script, and then I really catch it,
That's the worst.
And I really catch it quickly that there's not people trying to listen to what I'm saying or to what I need. They're just going through this checklist.
Okay.
And it's like, so are these people? Is this really just a pass, or do these people just need to develop it more, or just throw it all out and just be people and genuinely try to help someone?
You know, when I hear these questions, sometimes I get a pain within myself, and I get a pain within myself because I see part of myself in that, and I've been that person, and I was that person at 22 when I joined Merrill Lynch.
Right?
I've seen the light, but I've been in that place, And I know why people do that, because they're coming to meet a senior executive, or they have them on the phone, because a script I would call a PowerPoint presentation when you're presenting to someone too. Mm-hmm. That's almost like a script.
Right.
And the customer is thinking, am I dealing with a call center from India, or am I dealing with a real life person here that's going to act as a guide and help me through the buying process?
I had someone try and sell me technology. I don't like to put up with people who waste my time. But these people came in and they said, we have 2 different technologies. And I said, having done my research, I've already looked at your technologies. The first one I have no application for, I'm not interested in. The second one, I'm only interested in this component of it. And I gave them the courtesy of telling them exactly what I wanted to talk about.
So you were like the patient who went to the doctor and said,
No. I wanted them to talk about the part that I felt was most valuable to me. They spent an hour and 45 minutes taking me through both technologies, constantly saying, now I know this has no application for you, but this is really exciting. Let's go in it.
And I think it's...
And I'm going... and I had to go to the bathroom really bad. And so I'm sitting there like, I'm drinking a lot of coffee. Let's go through this meeting. It was just, it was so upsetting to me. And I wanted to pull the guy aside later and be like, here's a tip, but that would make me super direct and rude. So it doesn't go over well. Sometimes I try to give people tips like that. They do not appreciate it.
So he didn't meet you where you are.
I told him exactly what I was interested in talking about.
So what he should have done is met you where you were, and he should have dealt with that. And then based off of what you said, because I think when you're talking about a script, a lot of your audience, are they in Canada or the States? Or?
Canada, US. We have people in Europe. Okay. We have our friends in Sweden.
Then a lot of people might know who Second City is.
Second City comedy group.
The comedy group, improvisation, and they know people like Tina Fey or Stephen Colbert.
You always have to say yes
or Bill Murray or all those great comedians that can be in the moment. And so I think when you're giving a script to someone, you're imposing your agenda on them. And so I've been taking a lot of courses at Second City in improv because it teaches you. Yeah, I have for the last year.
I would love to do improv. I've told my wife that
you would be awesome at it.
I would love to do improv because I'm too goofy, though.
But the great thing about
it, prerequisite.
I'm too analytical, so I always want to follow a process. So I never really understood what a collaborative conversation is, because part of me is trying to control, because chaos frightens me a little bit.
Right.
It frightens me in sales.
But it frightens everybody, right?
It frightens everyone.
You talk about patterns.
It doesn't frighten me at all.
No, but what's even stronger, like you guys talked about.
You can handle it. I can't.
But you know what it is? Yeah. It's hitting the point. I do this now. I do not worry about remembering where stuff goes, because I've learned that if I put it, so if I go, where should I put my wrench set, right? And the first place that pops into my head for my wrench set, I'll put it there, because the next time I go, hey, where's my wrench set? The first thing that pops in my head, I'll go look there.
Right.
My wife has a place for everything, but when she loses something, she cannot find it. I spend all my time just looking for stuff because I don't keep track of anything. But that's the same thing with a sales meeting. I don't worry about what the person's going to throw at me, because I trust that in the moment I will be able to respond with even saying, that's a difficult question. Let me think about this a minute.
So
I don't even spend any time worrying.
A couple of things that are interesting about that, aside from finding your wrench set in the refrigerator.
What was it doing there? Why? How come?
Hold on, I spent a lot of time looking for stuff. So it's not the best. It's not the best thing.
It's not a very good system,
but it is
But it's a
worry-free.
good story.
But that's so far from where it should be.
It is worry-free.
So I think, that being in the moment and not posing your agenda on someone is critically important. And I think things happen so quickly in a sales call that you can't follow a sales call through your conscious mind. You have to feel your way through a sales call. And if I'm going to listen to you, truly listen, then what I have to do is not be thinking ahead in terms of what I'm going to say next. I have to just let go of my agenda and truly listen and trust I'll know what to say when you finish. And so you might say something that I thought the conversation was going west. You say something to me and suddenly it's going northwest or southwest or maybe even east. And so I pick up on that and then I move again. And that's how we have a collaborative conversation. And that's when you start to think, wow, this guy isn't imposing his agenda on me. Yeah. And we might discover something new. And the awful thing about it is before, when I used to sell, I was so sequentially orientated that there was only one door that was open to me. But now there could be 12 different doors open because we could mutually discover, a new solution that I hadn't quite thought of before, but it could work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem that I have with a script. And so I got so excited about improv and I was going to incorporate it into my program. But if you're an idiot and you do improv, you're an improvisational idiot. And so I think to do improv really well, you need the wisdom. So I need to really listen to you and trust I'll know what to say. But I got to know what to say. And so I have to see those patterns. And if I can't see those patterns, then I just might say something stupid.
So personally, I love the mechanics of comedy. I'm not a comedy guy. Like I've never tried improv or anything like that, but I love the mechanics of comedy. And I used to, do you remember the old show? It was a British show originally. Whose Line Is It Anyway?
I love
it became
that.
to America, but the British one's great. They also have a great show called Have I Got News for You and Mock of the Week, and they have all these great shows. But some of the greatest improv artists were asked to speak about what made them good at improv, and they basically just said you just have to have the widest, deepest amount of reference points you can make. Like great improv is just being able to reference the most absurd Beethoven reference out of nowhere, or it's about reading this, or it's about reading that.
It's about joining things too.
It's about taking everybody, leading them to the right and then quickly taking them to the left.
Yeah.
But mostly what I took away from it is just try to capture as many weird things as you can. And you know what? I bring that into sales all the time too, because
you are curious. And so when you're working with customers, you're not just selling videos. You're really trying to get to know their business. Yeah. And so that seeps into your subconscious that you can then pull on at the heat of the moment through a feeling. Because it's within your subconscious. So when I work with companies to help them with their storytelling, I'm not trying to teach them to be storytellers. Then I go to the top people and I get the top stories to help with the top insights, and I put that into an e-learning program. And then people really absorb that into their subconscious, so that then when they're with a customer, I don't want them to just parrot one story. I want them to take a story like a loaf of bread and cut it up and then give them kind of sandwich at a time. But they might just not do it from one story. They might be pulling from all 5 different stories, little bits and pieces, and delivering it in a conversation. And sometimes they deliver it in full, but often it would be in that improvisational conversation. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah. So is that how you? Because looking at your blog, you do make mention of role play videos. is that how you would kind of propagate these stories amongst the group?
What happens is you learn as you go along. So I got on the phone with an old friend of mine at Epicor today, Tony, and he's become kind of a dear street friend. You know, someone becomes kind of that kindred soul, and you really get along, and you don't know why. You have similar values, but whatever. So that's new. So I called him up and I said, I've got something new. And it's like, boom, come on in, let's do something. How easy is that? But he knows there's that experience there. But the point is, before I used to teach the storytelling and then rely on people to do it.
Right.
But they don't. You know, everyone knows that diet and exercise are the key to health. And yet 2/3 of people are overweight, including myself. I could lose 10 pounds. I know what to do. I just don't always do it. Yeah. People know they should tell stories. But they don't. The training ends and they go back to their desk and they get busy and they do what they've always done.
I have to say, I think in our industry, I think in any creative industry, maybe if you're a graphic designer, no. But if you're in our industry, you should be capable of telling stories because you are a storyteller on the brand's behalf. Like, so the thing is, a lot of people, you know, it's the typical doctor professional scenario, right? Which is, I'm a dentist, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm going to start my own practice.
Right.
Doesn't mean you're going to run a great practice. Doesn't mean you're going to market. Doesn't mean you're going to sell. Doesn't mean you're going to be anything. You're a very, very good technician. A lot of people in our industries take the leap from technician to entrepreneur, and they need to be able to well round out their skill sets, which includes operations, includes customer service, it includes understanding the needs of the audience, but it includes sales. And so if you're that type of technician who's moving to an entrepreneur role, if you're going to sell your firm, if you're a storyteller, surely you should be able to tell a story. One should hope.
Ideally, I just worked with a bunch of people that are with a real estate company, super smart people, and they're selling the outsourcing of the real estate. So they'll go to a big bank like CIBC and manage all the real estate globally. So these people are doing like monster deals. And I worked with them in Dublin last week. Yeah. And one of the things they were saying, and these are really good, smart people, high caliber, extremely well-paid people, they were saying, well, we're struggling putting these stories together because we don't quite have the customer example. Why? Because they're showing up and they're telling the customer all about their technology and their offering, and they're hoping the customer figures it out. And some of the customers do figure it out, but a lot of customers don't figure it out, and they're missing all those sales. And I was just working with this company last week, JLL, and one of the guys was a bit of a cynic in the office, but that was fine because he's just trying to get to the truth. He's not trying to be difficult. And then in the break, he said, you know what? When I say something verbally, customers always challenge me on it. But when I tell them a story, they don't challenge me.
We always lead everything with, listen, guys, this would be very, very easy for us to do this safe project. That's on the back burner. You pull the ripcord at any time. You say, Mark, you're overcomplicating it. You say, Mark, you know what? Just we came to you for a safe video. Make us a safe video. That's back here. That's always there. You can pull the ripcord anytime. But let's spend some time looking at what's going to really work. And if at the end you want to go back to that safe video, we'll produce it for you. It'll be good. We'll make money. You'll be happy. It'll do the minimum objectives. Let's try and be a little bit more aspirational than that. Let's try and raise the bar a little bit more.
The same is true with that Kickstarter video we're working on right now. Right.
We're working on a Kickstarter video where he came to us and I said, listen, I know your budget. We can do a safe video for you, but can we just, every project we look at as an opportunity to do something amazing, to revolutionize a business.
That's actually a nice way to soften your challenging approach.
Well, I do a lot of softening only because I want them to understand my intentions.
That's not a total right hook.
Okay.
You're softening the approach because you're saying we can go back there, but let's just go here for a bit.
Let's at least explore it.
Yeah. So I'm going to respect you, and if you want to do this, we can do that. But why don't you just hear me out and let's try and go this other direction.
I ask permission for everything, right? I don't just take them there. I say, is there an appetite?
So one of the ways you could have done that is, listen. We'll do the safe video if you want, and tell me at any time, and we'll pull the ripcord or however you phrased it. But let's try and do something great. And why don't I first share with you a story about someone else, and then that'll set the platform for how we could do something great with you. And maybe it's different, maybe it's similar, I don't know, but it'll at least get the conversation going. And that might be a way that you do it.
So you're looking to join a small niche organization.
And Markham, you're gonna commute all the way from the island.
Oh, I don't know if his bike goes that far.
Oh, you come up to the airport, fly from there to this airport.
You could, except for they don't want the airport there.
No,
does that airport really bother you? I mean, I know the jets would, but the current situation No.
We make more noise than the.
This
is going to be broadcasted.
That club must have been terrible, though, right? The docks, that must have been the worst.
Yeah, it was a bit noisy.
At like 2-3 a.m.
Yeah, but then the party boats can be noisy too.
Oh, For all of our local
How many
Toronto
people live
listeners,
on the island?
Oh, here we
what,
go.
10,000? How many?
Probably around 750.
What?
Oh, wow.
So
And you
5
guys have
million.
to, you guys have to lease it, right? Like no one's allowed to own it. The city
That's
owns
right.
all the homes.
There was half of the people on the island that wanted ownership, and the other half were just happy to do it the way that it is. And the ownership people failed, and we got the leases. It's not the perfect
So how do
situation.
you fix
Because
up a
I bought
home?
my house 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and real estate's doubled in Toronto in the same time, but my
Yeah.
value stayed the same.
wow.
So there you go.
So
Wow.
you bought the house.
Yeah,
I thought it's
I
leased.
tore it down and I built it. I own the house. I just don't own the land.
Right.
Oh, weird. Anyway,
So wait,
that's for all of our
750
local Toronto
Interesting.
listeners. If you're interested, if you're in the States or whatever, we have this great little island that 750 people live on.
No cars.
No, it's so weird to me. It's so
Yeah.
weird, but very cool. Listen, thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate the extra time, the hour 12 you gave us.
My pleasure. It was fun.
awesome.
It was improv, wasn't it?
It was improv. Okay, so a
was.
horse walks by and pees on your leg.
Thanks for that.
No, that was a setup.
Yeah.
Yes, and So that was our conversation with Michael Harris. If you want to check out a bit more about him, really look at the book Insight Selling. You can get it on Amazon. That's where I got it. Michael Harris. Or you can reach him on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @InsightDemand. Listen, Michael, thanks so much for coming on. And thank you to all the listeners. Thank you, Louis Vazenios, Roland
You're welcome.
Echevarria.
Thank
right?
you, Mark.
I know we put you on the spot a bit, Roland, there with that whole
that was good.
share
I was just
story.
trying clarification what to say.
But it was fun.
I think it
Gosh, it
worked
was
out
such a
well.
fun hour.
It was. You delivered.
I think he
It
was
was good.
right. I think Michael
Yeah.
was right. We're kindred spirits.
I think so.
You guys, maybe.
Yeah.
What about those people with the script? What do we do with them?
Gosh, when you know what someone you brought that up. When someone calls me up
Yeah.
on the telephone and you could hear it, right? It's the
You
like
You
know.
can hear it so easily.
Here, ready, okay. Ring ring.
What I'm supposed to do the
You're supposed to pick
salesman?
up. No, I'm doing the salesman.
You are the
Ring,
salesman?
Ring, yeah.
Hello?
Oh,
No. Try that again.
ring ring.
Pick up.
Good afternoon, Phanta Media. Roland speaking.
Oh, hi there, Roland, is it? Hi there, my name is Mark, and what a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? Let me ask
Let
you
me
a
look
quick
out the window.
question, Roland.
Okay, I got
Let me
shitty
ask you a
rain
really
here.
quick question. When was the last time that you stepped outside on a beautiful day like today and thought to yourself, you know what we need? We need more business. You know, Roland, if you're like a lot of people within this industry,
Can
you
I
need a
answer
lot
any of the
more
goddamn
business.
questions you're asking
And
No,
for people
hold
like
on.
you, I think it's really key that you think of three key things. Roland, have you thought about the three key things that are there? Yeah, so
Let him
fantastic.
finish the script.
No, you're not supposed to ever let anyone answer a question.
I was like,
Right?
okay. I guess so.
So if you're like
Uh-huh.
most people in business, especially the people that I'm talking to, it's really key that you learn these three things. Now, Roland, you might be asking yourself, how can I learn these three secrets that
Right.
make every business a millionaire? Roland, are you interested in being a millionaire?
He's not paying attention.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so
Okay.
that yeah. So exactly. So the three things that leads everyone to be a millionaire
Okay.
can be taught. Roland, if I told you today that I could teach you these things, would you believe me?
I guess.
Exactly. You would
Yeah.
always question to yourself, you know what? Listen, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not a salesperson. I just want to
Okay.
invite you out to a free seminar where you
Right.
can learn three key things. Roland, are you interested in becoming a millionaire one day? What are your dreams?
Yeah, money sounds like a good idea.
Money, of course. Money, everything that you can do with it, you can live the life you want to live. You can buy health, wealth, and happiness. That's what I always tell people, right?
I like that.
Wealth,
Rolls
health,
up.
and happiness.
That's
So,
right.
Roland, what if I told you that I could invite you out to a free event in your area, in your part of town, right now?
Oh.
Exactly. Most people are speechless when they hear it. Should we keep going or what?
But then you get
They
people
can't
like,
say no if you don't stop.
You know what I do?
I just hang up the phone.
I don't do that because I feel rude. What I do is I usually
don't
stop the
give a
person and say, hey, man, real quick, I'm just going to stop you there. And then I just ask them a question that has nothing to do with the script.
And they go like,
And I go, hey, man, I'm gonna stop you right there, real quick. What's the point? What are you getting to? And they go, what I would like to talk to you about today is sales. You know what? I'm not interested in sales. Thanks so much, man.
You hear like the clicking of like the script, like, oh, I gotta get to that part.
shuffle.
Oh,
the paper.
rebuttal.
Yeah, you just jump straight
No,
ahead.
you should go like, oh, hang on a second. I know you're trying to tell me something. What is it?
Yeah.
And then like, no,
Oscar,
why are you
Oscar
telling me?
spent time
Man.
in collections on the telephone. He used to work for like AT&T or something in the collections department. And dude, have you heard him go into phone mode when he doesn't trust someone? Like when someone calls us asking for a quote and he's not quite sure who
He's
they are.
very nice, I find.
He seems nice, but he is pointed. That guy knows how to work someone over on the phone, man. Let me tell you. It's his Colombian roots and his AT&T collection call training.
Back up.
Those two together, when you put them...
When you put them together,
That's
it's
it.
a deadly combination.
I don't
Anyway.
really let people speak.
That was a weird tangent. But listen, guys, thanks so much for joining us.
go.
Thank you, audience,
Thank
for
you,
joining
bye.
us as always. And we will talk to you next week.
Next week.
Yup, plop, plop.
Blibbity-doo.
Blibbity-doo, blibbity-blue. Bye, Roland.